let's go to what Gary said today. That if you've read Twitter at all, then it sounds like Gary Danielson said there's not really much of a difference between Neyland Stadium and every other SEC stadium. It's all the same.
That's what he said.
Yeah. That's actually, I think I just quoted word for word what I read on Twitter earlier today. I'm going to read you the actual quote. Now, it's still not a glowing review of Neyland Stadium, but what I just said is actually not what Gary Danielson said. Here is the full quote from Gary Danielson. This is not a criticism, just an observation. It has nothing to do with Neyland per se or any other stadium. Home field advantage, he's talking about home field advantage, so they just put that in parentheses. He said it's about the same every week, whether you're playing at Ole Miss or LSU or Florida in the swamp or Georgia. For a football player, loud is loud. I don't know if it makes any difference if there's 80,000 loud people or 100,000 loud people. That's what he said. Now, is he implying that it's kind of the same at Neyland as everywhere else? Yeah, that's what he's implying. But objectively speaking, first of all, this is scientifically measurable. There is a meter that measures the volume at every SEC stadium. So objectively speaking, he's wrong. Now, take that out of it. Zach makes a good point. Ask Bama last year, Gary. That's a good point. I know I'm wearing an orange shirt right now. I get that. You may not see them, but I actually always I've got orange glasses on right now too that I see through every week. So if I remove my orange glasses just for a moment and objectively I look at what Ole Miss is, what Vaught Hemingway, isn't that the name of their stadium?
Yep.
Yeah. So if I look at Vaught Hemingway Stadium and I look at Neyland Stadium, no, those are not the same. I'm sorry. First of all, there's way less people, but secondly, the actual structural design of the stadium makes it not the same. If you go to Vaught Hemingway Stadium, it's not as tall as Neyland, and there's gaps in the corners so sound can escape. One of the things that is so bizarre about Neyland is that the physical shape of the stadium is conducive to amplifying sound. And it's visually intimidating because I would venture to guess if they were going to make a new Neyland Stadium, like something crazy happened, they made a new Neyland Stadium, I would venture to guess that the steep of the upper bowl is now illegal. If I had to guess, like I'm sure there are like laws in place and stuff that any new construction stadiums cannot have the same pitch as the upper bowl in Neyland Stadium, because I mean, dude, you're like straight. It feels like you're going straight up. I mean, like it's wild, and it looks that way when you're on field level. That's the thing, is like it's not like people are spread out; they're on top of you in Neyland Stadium. That's the difference, and there's no escape for the sound. So there's no gaps in the corners. The height of the stadium plays into that. So it's perfectly designed to amplify sound on field level. That's the difference. That's the difference. If you go watch, I'll go back to the South Carolina game. Rustin and I were there. We got to hear it. It was crazy loud. At one point, it hit 117 decibels on the decibel meter. But just ignore that, even though that's a scientifically measurable thing. Go watch the replay from SEC Network. And if you go to Vaught Hemingway Stadium, you have no problem hearing Cole Kublik on the sideline when he's doing a sideline report. They specifically did a segment during the game 2 weeks ago where Cole was standing on the sideline and he was talking about how loud it was in the stadium, and you could barely even hear him talking because it was so loud all behind him. And he's talking right in the microphone. I've never seen on a television broadcast they do a segment specifically with the sideline reporter just to demonstrate how loud it is in the stadium at that moment. And, you know, the fact that I had to rewind it 3 times just to hear all the stuff he said, and I still didn't even catch the last couple words because it was so loud. No, that's different. That's different. And so I'm sure that Texas A&M was like, "Dadgummit, Gary, why'd you say that?" Because now he just gave them a little extra oomph. The only thing you see said there are quotes from the previous players that literally said our stadium was the toughest to play in because of the noise. She is exactly right.
Cole said it last week on the sideline. Like,
yep.
And that was my thing with the whole deal. As a color commentator, what was even the point of making that statement?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, there was number one, it's not valid. Again, like you said, we have actual decibel readers. Like, we can actually see, yes, this is significantly louder than Missouri. He essentially just equated Neyland Stadium to Vanderbilt. I mean, any rational person can walk in and go, the only time Vandy's loud is when Tennessee's playing at Vandy.
Yeah, for real.
So you can't. It's a lunatic statement to even make.
Brennan said last year we hit 125 when we beat Bama. That's true. I think actually at one point in the game it got up to 129.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
that was the record.
And it was like 128.6 or something. It almost hit 129.
And that was the record. That's the record at Neyland now. I mean, I get he's saying loud's loud, 80,000, 100,000 doesn't matter. You just can't hear. It's loud.
But even that, it's just not true because
right.
You go to Starkville, and they're ringing those stupid cowbells the whole game. Do you ever see anybody jump off sides in Starkville because of the cowbells? No, it doesn't happen because they don't get that loud. Do you see people, South Carolina, do you see people jump off sides because of crowd noise? Yeah. So to even make that statement, it's just, it makes zero sense.
So I want to go back to what the only 10UC said when she said there are quotes from previous players that literally said our stadium was the toughest to play in because of the noise. So he is the former offensive lineman, Ty Darlington for Oklahoma. He was in Neyland on September 12th for the home opener that year.
Josh
he
Dobbs
said, I was never
Baker Mayfield.
That's exactly right. Yes, the double overtime game. He said, I was never a big believer in home field advantage. I scoffed at the notion that a fan could actually have an impact on a football game. You have a hostile crowd? Good. I feed off of hostile crowds, and I embrace it when fans ridicule me. You think you're loud? Whatever. We use a silent count anyways, and noise is only a factor on 3 to 4 plays a game. Your home field advantage is incredibly overrated. Bring it on. You're wasting your breath. The Vol faithful made it absolutely impossible to communicate. So he totally, he starts off with I was always like, nah, it's not a big deal. And then he was like, except this one. He said, on the first drive, we had to change our snap count because even our silent count was ineffective against that wall of noise. I came off the field after that first drive and reassured Coach Bedenbaugh that the fans would settle down in due time and that noise was not going to be an issue going forward. Boy, was I wrong. This is the part that Admiral quoted. The noise was a constant oppressive force. I could literally feel it on my skin. Oh man, that gives me goosebumps even talking about it. This was a former opponent at Neyland saying this. But these fans weren't just loud on the first drive or just on third down or just in the fourth quarter. It was every single play. On the offensive line, we couldn't hear Baker's play calls. We couldn't make our own combo calls, and we couldn't communicate checks and alerts verbally. We resorted to a makeshift hand signaling system that was at times more confusing than informative. At times, we were much more worried about simply knowing the play than we were about actually executing it. That night in Neyland Stadium, playing football seemed all but impossible. And that can be attributed as much to the men and women in the stands as to the uniformed men on the field itself. That night, as I boarded the flight back to Norman with Rocky Top ringing in my ears, I realized that I had been converted from a man skeptical of fan impact to a man in awe of it. Woo-hoo-hoo!
And
What a
somehow
quote, baby.
Still find a way to lose.
Yep. What a quote. That is absolutely just tremendous compliment. I mean, and so well written and worded. I mean, that was just amazing. I love it. And that's an opponent who played in Neyland saying that. Man, sign me up for that. We should read that at every show now, just because it gets me pumped up. We should read that every single week. I love it.